I'd like to welcome everybody to the March meeting of the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Commission. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. As always, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer, and Eddie Miller has agreed to lead us in that. Eddie?
Okay. Please bow. Lord, thank you for your many blessings. We ask that you help us use our blessings to help those that are less fortunate. Please help us to make good decisions today and help there be peace and goodwill throughout the world. Amen.
Amen.
Say the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Eddie. Everybody should have received their packets in the last couple of days, and contained in the packets were the minutes from our February 1st meeting. This time we'll entertain any changes or corrections that need to be made, and if there are none, a motion for approval.
I don't see Rick LaLance's name as being present at the last. Oh, that's right. He was a little late.
If there's just a skosh late.
If there's no revision to the minutes, I move for approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Well, I mean, you know, Rick was early this week because there's only 2 items on the agenda. We can always count on him when we got a light agenda. Even though we do have a light agenda today, I think we're going to have some great discussion about the West Park. For those of you that were unable to attend the joint session that we had with City Council, it was a great meeting, and that's kind of where we are today. Obviously, for an agenda like this, normally we would have deferred this meeting and consolidated, but the primary purpose of today's meeting is as a follow-up to the joint meeting. We agreed that we would all review the concepts that were presented. Everybody's had a kind of a week now to take a look at those and give some thought to it, and our hope is today that we'll come to a consensus of which one of these we think directionally is where we want to head, and we're going to provide that recommendation to council, and they're going to do the same. So we're kind of in the dream phase of planning the project right now of what we want it to look like, and there's a lot of work left to come past this. So Angela, I'll turn it over to you and just start us off with a little background, and we'll go from there.
You bet. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be at this point. Just to set the table, I think, for this discussion, we're here today to listen, to get some feedback. We presented at that joint meeting concepts A, B, and C, also at some points called 1A, 1B, and 2. So we'll try to keep clear on that. We have queued up here additional copies of what was presented before in terms of concepts, the maps that are there, some more of that information. We have several folks in the audience that are here today to answer any questions that you have as we listen and really look in. We are not confined to A, B, and C. We're looking to really hear what you like. These are obviously very preliminary. When you look at the details and you look at what is presented, we're working to develop that specific proposal. We're looking to develop our master plan. Right now with these concepts, what we're really looking is to make sure that we're on track as we really dig into this process. We have here today Josh Gulick from Kimley Horn, and Mr. Lyons, our city manager, of course, is here, and I think he's going to kind of give us some opening remarks if I could ask him to do that.
I think Angela covered it pretty well, but maybe a couple of things about kind of what we know right now. What we know right now is all of those concepts have neighborhood park elements. This isn't a choice between a regional park versus a neighborhood park. I think all 3 concepts, it's going to be important to have that neighborhood element. So we certainly see that being a part of any proposal. I think the second thing we know is it's really time for us to dream right now. It's not often a city manager gets up to stand and say, let's not worry about the money just yet. But I think right now, let's not worry about the money just yet. There's going to be plenty of opportunity to review what the park's going to cost, what can we afford, how does it fit in with other city priorities. So we don't want to constrain your dreaming and your thoughts right now. Let's see what we want to do, and then we can look to go there from cost. So this is a really exciting project. It's not often we get a chance to tackle a piece of property like this and build something for several generations for Murfreesboro. So really excited to hear what you guys have to say today and see which direction we need to run.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you being here. Well, these, as we had promised at the joint meeting, all of these were emailed to everyone. So, you know, I'll open it up for any comments that anybody wants to make. This is just like the agenda item says, this is a discussion. Linda and I were talking just before the meeting started, you know, and I think it's important to point out, she made a valid point. You know, one thing that was emphasized, and Rob just alluded to it, is that, you know, the community meetings, the other things that were held, all of the elements that were most important and expressed by the citizens that they wanted to see in this project, every single design or concept that's been presented to us covers all of them. So we don't have to, you know, they're all represented in each one. It's just kind of, we need to provide a little direction to where we think we want this thing headed.
If I could also, just to help bring to this discussion, we have a chart just to kind of hit that comparison so that you can see here with those options A, B, and C. Just as a comparison point, you have the concept plans in front of you. This is just to kind of help you see what is proposed there. With those, as we talked about in our joint meetings, in terms of pavilions, playgrounds, that interactive water feature, that splash pad, event space, really looking at what's offered for the community element. The athletic opportunities in this space are obviously very key and very focused, and I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about today. But just to reemphasize that point, this kind of gives you a comparison piece, and again, preliminary. We can obviously work within this concept to really dig into some of your specific feedback.
Angela, I appreciate you going over this because initially in the meeting the other night, I thought there was a great differentiation, and I think it's really important to include as many of these as possible. And I'll leave it at that. But at some point, I'd like to hear your thoughts, and if you have a preference. And I don't want to color the other members' thoughts, though, but I know that in a leadership position, sometimes you can see things that we can't see. So, and that may not be the case here. So, just tossing that out there.
You bet. I think just to without getting into a lot of the specifics yet, and I'd be glad to, I think one of the things that's important to me is that we look at our entire park system. We look at our goals and our mission and our purpose as we develop everything. This is obviously the topic of discussion. This is not our only piece of property, and this is not our only opportunity to meet needs. The effect that this park will have, the relief that some of these facilities will give to existing parks, the opportunity to place items that are not included in these designs ultimately, but the opportunity to include them in existing parks or future parks, so that we can meet that community demand, and so that we can better serve our public is really important. So I think for me and my preferences, that is one of the things that really guides my thought process with this. We have need and focus for everything proposed here. Everything proposed here, I feel strongly, would be used and appreciated by the public. I think they're all very valid park amenities in terms of really hitting the balance between, as Mr. Lyons mentioned, that regional focus, that serving our leagues and then serving that neighborhood component. We don't have to choose one, but we do need to discuss our balance in how much attention and focus and priority it gets. And I'm honestly turning to you and our leadership in making those decisions.
I think we were charged with you all and by the council to do an internal needs assessment of what we need. And I would say that each one of these reflects, our internal needs assessment very accurately.
Thank you.
Thanks. Tim?
I like the first choice. I haven't come off it. I spoke with a lot of people since the last time we met. I think it, again, addresses the needs of the community, but also gives us an opportunity to generate some income. The one concern I have, in my mind, I'm sure there's a formula, there's less parking for 17 fields and more parking on the other options. Can someone give me some insight into that?
I think, and I'll speak to it for a second, I think first emphasis is in the preliminary concept and where we look at that. And then also the balance. And I think we can land, as we get into more detailed master planning, we'll get some solid numbers. I think these are just to really hit and recognize that parking is a valid need and a specific concern. I know that Kimley Horn has some different ratios and different needs. We can also look at our own community. We can compare it to our parking and needs at Barfield Crescent Park specifically. I know that in looking at where the flow is, where those points of high use are, in consideration for for games and number of players on the field, and then also in that transfer of games where they're you've got twice as many people as could actually fit as a piece, and then the event space. Looking at holding some significant major special events and what that would look like, and where people park is key. I think to dive into some more of those details. We have some folks here that could address some of those specifics if you'd like.
Well, I just remember when when the pool was redone, we didn't have enough parking, and we addressed it quickly, but I just thought if we're going to plan this accordingly, let's have that one worked out.
I think that's great feedback.
All right.
Is there, of the three, this might help, of the three, is there one that we think we can eliminate, that we all agree we would take out?
So my issue with that question is I like components
Sure.
of each, and I mean I wouldn't say that I want this design today. I would rather say this is what I want
Right.
in option 4.
And this is what we're trying to do, guys, is we're trying to provide a recommendation of the direction that we want to go. None of these are the final designs. I mean, these are just concepts to get us pointed in a specific direction so we can provide that feedback. Council can do the same. And then, Kimberly Horn can take this stuff and really start getting into the weeds of actual design based on that direction. Like, for me, I'll just say, I don't think C's a viable option because it doesn't provide enough function of the actual, what we need, ball fields. There's just not enough of them. I mean, I'm as big a fan of the green space and other things as the next guy, but I think whatever we end up with, we've got to have more fields than that for the investment that we're making in the facility.
I definitely agree with you, D, on that one. C would, I would also, due to the lack of facilities, especially the softball fields, I would also eliminate option C as well.
I've got a kind of a specific, this is all very exciting, but you mentioned the event space and it being in the same area with the multi-use fields. Is that something that can go on at the same time? I mean, if we're using these fields during season, does that knock any event out for the summer or the fall or something like that? And then kind of a follow-up to my question is, if you remember the bicentennial thing that we just went through in Nashville where they, I forget, or not bicentennial, but what's the park down there by the Capitol where they had the Centennial Park, where not Centennial, but by the Capitol.
Bicentennial Mall.
The mall.
Anyway, and, where they ended up with a big muddy mess down there after something, and So it destroyed whatever it had for a while, so.
Sure.
Are you referring to option A, Mr. Miller? Is
Well,
that the one that you're looking at?
Option A, or any of the options.
Yeah.
Option A or option B too, I
If
think.
you look at option A and option B, I think we plugged in some soccer fields there just to show that they can be multifunctional. And in a pinch, we could put some practice fields in there, that type of thing. Ultimately, you'd want it to be a big event space where you can host concerts, movies, that type of thing, festivals, and also just passive spaces that we need desperately, but could be used in a pinch for types of ball fields. If you look at C, we've got some very intentional multi-purpose athletic fields that are specified that would be lined off for different sports, lacrosse, soccer, pretty much anything you can do on that, and the event space would stay basically open green space. So I think that kind of answers your question, but definitely don't want to overuse it. It's not the intention of an option A and B to have it athletic fields.
I'll express my feelings on what I think the park should project and where the primary source of viewing this park will come from, and I think that's 840. 840 definitely looks across this park, and from tourism aspect of people driving down the road, I think that you want to have your, it's just like with a business, you want your best window facing the roadway, and that's the reason I don't like 1B so well, and because it basically, you look from the interstate or the 840 and you see a parking lot, and I don't think that's really what we're trying to project this park as being. It's not a parking lot, it's a ball facility, and a place where we're going to have concerts, and I hope we don't get too caught up on making sure that we've got playing surfaces, because playing surfaces are very important. I'm not downplaying that. It's important from the revenue side. It's also important from the youth side of preparing students and children as they grow up, the importance of athletics and team play and that. But we also need to be able to have a place in this park that is able to use, as Nate said, for concerts and park movies and that type thing, so that it's not brightly lit all the time, so that you can have events in it that might not be as quite broadcast themselves quite as much as what the ball fields would. But the ball fields will generally be brightly lit. I think that having them close to 840 is a good idea from a business standpoint of saying, let's project our parks to the public and show people who are just tourists or just passing through how Murfreesboro feels and the importance of that we're putting into this park. To stray from the topic slightly, I know we've referred to this as West Park, and we refer to the bridge as the bridge over Broad Street, which I think is terrible. Because at some point there will be a park that's more west of this, and we've already bought property, so we know this isn't the westest park. That's a terrible word, but we know this isn't going to be the park that is the furthest west in Murfreesboro in the hopefully near future. So my suggestion would be, let's try and bring back some of the names that we've lost in our park system, and in order to do that, I think that it would be a good idea to call this Legends Park and remember our sports legends from Murfreesboro historically, so that when you go there, there's a historical significance to the park as well as the athletic side of it. And name ball fields for, let's have a Price Field, let's have a Gearhart Field, let's have a Taylor Field for David Price, Kenny Gearhart, and Chuck Taylor, professional baseball players who came out of this community. Let's name some fields for Ray Duffy, preferably a championship park, in my opinion, because we lost his field when we built the tennis facility. Dennis Rainier and Lanny Goodwin deserve fields to be named after them. So I think that would be a good idea. And even from a different aspect, we've got people who have historical park or historical sports significant from Murfreesboro. Grantland Rice, Monty Hale, Senior, people who have strong histories in Murfreesboro that, if we could name parking lots and stuff like that after them, so that, when you get here, if you're playing on such and such field, you'd park in the Monty Hale lot. So I think that would allow us to add an educational factor, because when kids would come to those parks, there would be that inspiration there of this is something that I should try and attain, either being a great director of a parks department, as Angela has now done, and to be a professional ball player, or to be a great sportscaster or a writer or something that plays off sports. Even though I may not be the greatest athlete, I can still play a role in sports history. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to bring back a lot of the names of the past and parks that we've lost, and to revive that, and still have some open areas, because I'm sure 20 years from now there'll be some kids who will probably be doing great things in sports that would still leave us the opportunity to. Every field doesn't have to have a name on it. There can be a field 4, 5, and 6 if we just name 3 fields for somebody. But I think that there's an importance to trying to get this park with a personality of its own, so that it's recognized and add an educational factor to it, as well as the athletic side. That's my comments.
Thanks, Eddie. Good stuff. Any others?
I like it.
That's a good concept, and it's commendable. However, I think if we were to establish the priorities, it would be in our best interest to define the functions before we begin to address the naming piece of that. And it would better serve our time as well as our resources.
Dee,
Yeah,
what
Bill.
about security? Have we had any problems at Barfield Crescent Park with hoodlums or vandalism?
I'll let Angela address that.
I think the security as it relates to park design is going to be very important to us. I know one of the things that we'll work with from start to finish, even in how things are designed, in order to make this a visible, welcoming space that encourages good use, that encourages positive use, even in the park design, even in where the roads go, where the landscaping is placed, how things are oriented, so that it can serve the public and serve us best as a community in relation to that. I know we've got a lot of folks involved in that. Kimley Horn, one of the things that we talked about when we were putting these together was some of the certifications that are involved, that they've brought to the table in terms of environmental design and how that relates to a good, safe park is really important to us. Making sure that we're choosing a function that serves us well. I think sometimes the wear and tear you see in terms of specific vandalism absolutely can happen. It can also just be in overuse that can really affect our park space. So I think now is a wonderful time to address that concept and looking at it. Even just by comparison, I know talking with the person who designed the current Kids Castle Playground and its orientation. She was a former police officer, and part of her presentation was how the slides and the enclosed spaces were facing, so that they could be patrolled from the patrol car. Which is something that it wouldn't have occurred to me even in that piece, not having flat spaces that are enclosed. Some of those pieces, I think, a lot of energy and a lot of forethought on the front side can really help address the problems that you're mentioning. I appreciate that comment very much.
Well, I know every so often we have problems at the golf course.
Yes, sir.
They'll break in the pro shop one time, maintenance building the next. It's not always money they want. Sometimes it's just to get a cart, tear up a green or something, and it's very disgusting that somebody would do that, but we have that problem more often than we should.
Yes, sir.
And I just wondered if our parks was having the same problem.
I think, another thing to look at as we develop from this preliminary master plan into that master plan in terms of park entrance, exits, where we can gate and how, where they are patrolled, because the Murfreesboro Police Department in patrolling our parks and how they do that how they're accessed, and that open design, bringing in the good positive use again, really helps us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
I have not heard a comment that leads me from Concept A. I'd like to move that we adopt Concept A.
Well, I like Concept A. There's a couple of things that I would like to maybe bring in from some of the other concepts to adjust and I guess part of the question that I got, I'm looking at A and specifically the two groupings, but the 4 softball fields at the top, if it would be instead able to do multi-purpose fields on that side of the parking lot as well, to where you have a grouping of 4 types of multi-purpose fields, but maybe those 2 are specifically lined and groomed for the specific fields, and more of the event space is left more open and available, and can be utilized for practice or can be utilized for free play. But my question is, does taking those 4 fields, how does that affect our opportunities? If we're talking about a tournament, do the 7 fields down on the interstate side of the park, would that be sufficient for a quality tournament? Does it need to be more than 7? I mean, that tournament component is out there hanging over the decision a little bit, and I'd love some feedback.
Hey, Thomas.
Well,
I'm going to add to this just while you're I think what might be a way to ask this is basically, if we're looking at you've got this area of 13 fields along kind of the southern piece, and then you've got those other 4 at the top. Would those 13 fields be enough to provide, some vast majority, not every single thing you may ever need, obviously, but the vast majority of what you might need for a tournament? Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, because we've got
curious of the same thing.
27 field shortage. Those 13 is half of it. I mean, that's a huge improvement in and of itself. And my question is not that is it sufficient, but what does it allow versus the 4 extras versus option C, where there's only the 3, or with the championship, only 4 of the youth softball?
Well, I want to say we host really quality tournaments on 4 fields. I mean, Murfreesboro has a volunteer base. We just do it really well, and it doesn't matter if it's 4 fields or 20 fields. However, when you're talking about a regional tournament or a national, international event, we have a few. There's 3 that I can think of right now that occur in the city, and they'll utilize anywhere from 12 to 17 fields, like the BPA World Series. They use portable mounds and portable fencing. They'll use 17 fields within the city. However, they'll still use fields in Smyrna, Shelbyville, surrounding areas. Most of the tournaments that we host, while we're the hub for a tournament, they're still having to go around the surrounding areas. Probably the optimum amount of space for a good regional tournament, allowing everyone to come to Murfreesboro, everyone to stay in Murfreesboro and play in Murfreesboro, would be 12 fields that we could put there. But any fields would be a relief. If we build 6 fields, huge relief. In terms of local leagues, if we could build 4 fields to get the adults out, we could provide some sort of relief. But keep in mind, just to know where we're at in comparison, we have a little over 3,000 baseball, softball players every spring. And so 3,000 players are playing on 19 fields. Some of those are not the most desirable. Old Fort, And then we're using the new field at the Miracle Park to supplement, which we don't consider those tournament fields. So we have 17 tournament fields for baseball, but only about 15 fields total for tournaments for softball. But there's 3,000, that's rec players, what I call rec players. That's adults, girls, and boys playing baseball and softball every spring. If you look at other sports, say soccer, for example, with the new practice fields we've brought online, they'll have 23 regulation soccer fields to satisfy a need of about 1,800 adults and youth. So we've made a lot of advances in terms of soccer because they were way behind. But baseball, we're only operating on about half of what we would need if we wanted to offer the same level of service to the baseball, softball community that we did to the soccer community. About 12 fields would get us up to where we need to be. Remember, we haven't built fields since 2000. In 2000, we built Barfield Crescent Park, and that had us at 25 fields. But since 2000, we lost 2 fields at Samsonite. We lost 2 fields at Oaklands. We lost a field at Patterson, and we lost a field at Old Fort. So since 2000, if we could build 6 fields, it would get us back to where we were when we built Barfield Crescent Park.
Mr. Shirley, that's a great comment, and I think where we are now, we have the ability to take that comment and conceptualize that, what it would look like if we did multi-purpose fields in that corner. So it's something we can go back, take these comments, and come up with kind of new options based on what you're saying, just to review, like what Mr. Laird's saying. 12 fields gets us a lot, and that's what it would leave us with, and we can see what else we can do with the rest of it. We can even incorporate some of the community elements from option number C into A, or whatever that looks like.
I just think back to your comment on our meeting that the thought was, or the expectation was, maybe 3 to 4 multi-purpose fields, and the event space in A, I would love for it to be more focused on event space and less on the practice. Although again, you could throw cones out there in practice, or especially Ultimate can play. If it's flat, they can play. They would love a groomed surface, obviously, but.
Sorry, the event space too. The concept there, and we've always said, I think Shane, our turf grass manager, and our whole department always said, if we had 20 or 30 acres of lighted space and not have it designated for anything, we could accomplish a whole lot. We could do special events. In event space, we're going to host, if we're really stacking up the schedule, you're only talking about 26 events, and that's every weekend when it's good weather. An event space like that, we could play lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, football, all of those events Monday through Thursday, leaving that event space open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And by having it as a general space and not designated per field, we're able to rotate fields around to reduce the wear and tear so that you could get maximum usage out of that space. If we set aside and say this is a multi-purpose field, we're going to have to deal with wear and tear, and the only real way to manage that is to take play off of it. However, if we open it up and we have 3 fields together, and we're able to move play around, we can use that continuously without having to give those days of rest in between.
Tell you what, as opposed to us saying, let's pick A, B, or C, I mean, my thought process on this was a little bit more like, hey, let's kind of give our opinion on what we think.
Direction.
And just kind of what we're trying to include. For example, what you just said, what I said last time was say, look, 11 to 13 baseball, softball fields, 3 or 4 multi-purpose fields that could double for event space. Because I would suspect that the design is going to probably change a good bit. I mean, once they figure out, there's going to be stuff that comes into this that, the
retention area.
The retention area, the fact that 840 is an interstate and how close you can have lights to the interstate, of what, brightness and all those kinds of things. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that comes into play when they actually put the design together on this thing. So if we were just to tell you guys, I mean, if we were just to tell the designers, hey, look, what we're trying to achieve is X. And if everybody up here says we're trying to get as many baseball fields as we can, then that's what they'll go do. But if we say, hey, we'd rather kind of have a good mixture, if we think a dozen ball fields would be a pretty good number, then let's shoot for 11 to 13 ball fields. Let's try to get 3 or 4 multi-purpose. We can talk about whether or not 2 of those might be turf, whatever, down the road. And then obviously all these other things that we like to do within the kind of what I'll call the other than fields things, the pavilion, playground, et cetera. I think everybody would want to include that. But does anybody have a real strong feeling one way or the other as it relates to, like, are you picking A because you really think 17 ball fields?
I do. I think it's time to catch up with the ball field issue in Murfreesboro. And whenever Thomas, states an opinion, he always has facts and data that just convince me more that it's right. And the ratio of players to fields that he quoted for soccer and baseball, softball speaks to it again. We're just way behind. And again, you alluded, Angela, that there are other lands and thoughts for the future that could address some of these other questions. I think this concept A speaks to what we need now, yet reaches out to a lot of the other community resources that were in the survey.
How about football and lacrosse? How do they factor into that? As far as the space needs.
The multi-event space in any of the drawings would fill our need for football and lacrosse. We're going to lose airport fields, so it's down the road. I would say that's going to be our next line of business. If we get baseball, softball where they need to be or in a comfortable position, that's the next pressure item is going to be football and lacrosse, a location specific to that. But by having 20, 30 acres of open space that we were able to do that, we can fill the need for our local football teams or local program and lacrosse in that, at least until we can, until the airport takes away those fields over there. Being able to move some things out of the airport, McKnight Park, and into a new facility would relieve some of that pressure as well.
It looks to me like A has 5 acres of event space, not anywhere close to 20 acres.
Yeah, I'm not sure how. I don't know that perspectives are really correct on that drawing. Just like the playground, when we initially met with Kimberly Horn, we really talked about a regional type playground, something the community could really be proud of. And on that map, it looks like a dot. So I'm not sure how much perspective it is. I know in our initial meeting with them, we had initiated 15 to 20 acres at a minimum for an event space, and I'm not sure if they...
We can go back and answer that question. Yeah. But like Tom said, it's so conceptual right now. We can adjust the amount of space needed based on the intention of that part of the park.
I think as we look, we had talked before about the planning that has gone into it up until this point, our internal needs assessment, surveys that we've done, a lot of work and a lot of public input on the Murfreesboro 2035 master planning. The part where we really look at our intentions, at what kind of features we need, and then where the best fit in our entire park system for those needed features are as it relates to this 123 acre piece. It's mostly cornfields. It's flat. It's right off of 840. It is not a great place for mountain biking because there's no elevation change at all. I think the opportunities that this piece of property provides, some of the reasons why we're looking to focus here on this property absolutely reflect those needs for athletic fields, and I think that they're very real. If I could ask, because we've talked, as Thomas mentioned, playgrounds, the interactive water feature concept, that needed splash pad piece, depending on where we're going with that's going to be a significant destination in this community. We have had more requests in every survey we've put out for a splash pad, and I don't want us to gloss over what that is. That could be anything from a small play fountain to a significant destination. The design, we talked about that entrance exit where things are placed. The interactive water feature is going to be a destination in itself. A family that has no interest in playing ball is still going to want to come there on a busy Saturday. We need to make sure that they can come in without interfering with the gate into the championship game. They don't want to come through and get caught up into that. Managing that parking, as Mr. Roediger expressed. Also, just managing that flow of traffic. When we look, I'd love some feedback on some individual components. If at some point in this master planning process, as we're really getting into that, trails were our most requested item, and when we did that last survey, we want to incorporate trails throughout the park. What that looks like, where those go, and where the focus is going to be important. Really looking at what's important to this group, where that focus hits. I'd love some feedback there. And the other thing we haven't really talked about as we get closer down the line, incorporating perhaps a public art component, a working with some of our partners to do a literacy component, to really tie in some special things. I know when we had our first kickoff meeting, Ms. Scales Harris had put a focus on that. How are we going to make this park special? What are we going to do to really highlight it where when you come into this park, this is something that we're really proud of as we go. And I think those opportunities we're just getting started as we get into it. I'd love some feedback on some of those components if I could.
Anyone?
Well, I love, I wrote on here artwork previously, and there are several of the notches by the parking lots and these corners of the field that are this little green patch as the trail goes by on right there in the top left of the for adult softball. It'd be a neat place just to place some sort of statue or artwork throughout, and I would just love that. I would love to see, especially along the walking trails, but even in the star component of the 5-field portion, some sort of creative, possibly interactive artwork. If there's some sort of bronze animal that kids would not be any problem with them climbing on. So you get this green animal and it's got the little shiny spot where they all rub the nose or something.
I love interactive art.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's something that's missing from Murfreesboro as a whole, and I think Parks and Recreation could certainly build that in.
Thank you. One of those dots on the map also is a old family cemetery on the site. The historical interpretation, we're learning more about that site. The trails, one of the features tucked in there that is going to be important to some folks in our community is going to be access to that site also. It's in need of some renovation and some attention now, but I think that historical interest, what makes this a park for everyone, we've all got different hobbies and interests and things that's going to bring us to this park. I appreciate that.
When you did talk about that, one of the comments that I'd heard or read on social media or components on B, that it didn't feel like B protected or respected that cemetery, putting it between the two ball fields. In C, with the trail going around it, or in A, where it's set aside and nothing approaches it, giving an opportunity to show respect. B felt a little disrespectful.
Okay, thank you.
Good comments. I do agree with what Rick was saying. I mean, I think, the design, this is, like we talked about at the very beginning, these are far from what the final design is going to be. These are just concepts that allow us to provide feedback and what we want the ultimate design to look like. And the council is going to take the feedback that we provide and do the same. And then that's when we go into design phase. Because I think one of the things Stephen said earlier, to me, there is not, from a concept standpoint, there's not a massive difference between A and B. They both have the same concepts. I think Tim's right. I mean, I think we need to focus on getting as many fields as we can in here without sacrificing some of these other things that are important that make it, an attractive destination for others. And there are things that I think they're components of this that I think not only make it attractive for the neighborhood and other, a destination thing like the splash pad, it makes it very attractive hosting a tournament. I mean, we've all drug kids to a facility, and you've got older brother, older sister playing in something, and you're bringing younger brothers and sisters along, and you've got to entertain them while the other sibling does their thing, and all these other things. I mean, it makes it a great place to, where people come and visit Murfreesboro, and I go, man, I wish my town had that. That was awesome. That's like for one of the things, talking about the differences in concepts, one of the things that I would like to see, like in A, I don't like the satellite fields. When we do it, I like to have all the fields kind of together, because if you've got two kids playing, guess where they're going to be? One of them's going to be playing on the lower 40, and the other one's going to be down here, and you can't see them both. I think as much as you can centralize that, I like that. But I think there's just not I think from a conceptual standpoint, while they're laid out differently, A and B are really, really similar. So I do agree. That's where I like it. But I think Eddie's point, I had not thought of that. I think that's I think we do want our curb appeal to be maximized on the most visible side, which is going to be A40.
One of the things that also jumped out in A, as we talk about it, that I really do like, is it appears that there's 3 playgrounds. You have a large playground in the northeast corner by the splash pad. You have a secondary playground that's very similar, that I would imagine conceptually, to the one that's at Siegel Park by the maintenance shed. That's much, much smaller. But boy, if you've got kids, if we did have 4 fields, satellite fields, it'd be really nice to have a little playground that the 4-year-old can go hang out while you can sit and watch the big sibling. And then there's a playground within the star component. Same concept on those 3 lower fields by the championship baseball and softball. That a small, and it can be just an interactive feature, but something that a 4-year-old who's got to sit and watch older brother or sister play can go hit up as well. I like those. And then the pavilions, I think there are 7 pavilions, I said, in every one of these concepts throughout, by the parking lots, by the fields, in the middle of open space. Multiple pavilions meet multiple purposes. I thought that was a really nice feature, and I'd certainly expect that to be in the final design plan.
So would everyone be comfortable with Angela reporting back to council that from a concept standpoint, we like the direction that A and B are headed? We think it's important that we meet the needs for fields and, incorporate all these other elements, but get as many fields as we can. And let council chew on that.
I think that's an excellent recommendation, because the operative here is to address the recreational and athletic needs of the community. And if we can do that by maximizing the access to 17 fields as opposed to 13 or less, that's really why we're engaged in this process.
Mm-hmm. Is everybody comfortable with that? Is there anything that anybody wants to add from our discussion today, in particular, that they want Angela to point out at the meeting?
Remembering the curb appeal, the art, the event space,
Multiple playgrounds, small but
Pavilions.
useful.
I think we hit it all.
And the art piece has been addressed very well with the Murfreesboro 2035. So we have really elevated that image and interest. So they really do intersect very nicely.
Is there any way that we can expedite the process by going ahead and bidding the excavation and the elevation work for the project? I mean, basically, no matter what we do, it looks like there's one basic location for the retention pond. And I know if there's one thing the mayor keeps saying, it's 2018. So can we get bulldozers rolling out there and bid that part of it and get that done on a separate part of business as opposed to the construction of the park and get the ball rolling? Because I think the sooner we get started, the better chance we've got of completing this project in a timely manner. So I would encourage us to go ahead and start a bid process for the elevation and excavation.
For anything that you guys think we could do, I guess is the only thing I'd add to that, certainly a retention pond, but anything that you think we can do on the front end?
I appreciate that feedback. I think, as we move forward, I would like to tell you that we've heard you ask us to do this as smart and as quickly as we can, and looking where those opportunities are. And as we move forward in that process, we'll at those first opportunities, we'll be back to you and we'll be back to council and proposing those.
I mean, we have no idea what the convention or the corporate headquarters is going to be in the Gateway area, but we've already got the area excavated and laid out so that it's ready, it's shovel ready to go on the site and start digging and put your project on it. I think that if we were to be proactive on this, it also gives us the advantage of locking in on what the price would be today as opposed to what it might be down the road. And it seems like whenever you do a project this large and there's multiple facets of it, they're much more apt to try and say, well, we've got an overrun here, so we need to add a little bit to it, and those change orders add up quickly. If we could go ahead and get somebody to get us a solid price that we could say this is what it's going to cost us, and go ahead and be prepared for that, I think it would be an advantageous move, not only to expedite it, but from a financial standpoint.
Thank you. We'll certainly look at it.
Or does anybody want to add anything else? Of course, Rick and Eddie will be there. They can share our conversations as well, but anything we want them in particular to bring to council as far as our opinions? Okay.
I really appreciate, I'm grateful to be a part of the process. I know there's a lot of enthusiasm for this project, and we want to make sure we're offering the very best. So I want to thank each of you for your comments and your support of doing this. It'll be fantastic.
Thanks, Angel. Becky, you're up. Becky's going to go over our upcoming events and activities.
Yes, and I will try to get through them as quickly as I can so we can wrap up. Starting this Friday, we are resuming our Food Truck Fridays at Cannonsburg Village. That is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. starting this Friday, and it will run through June. Then a new program that they will be having at the Wilderness Station. It's Murfreesboro's Most Misunderstood. This is so that we can kind of understand some of our local creatures that people kind of aren't real kind to, or feel, why do we have those? This will kind of explain their role in the environment so that we can kind of understand these animals. And some of the topics are bats, armadillos, vultures, rattlesnakes, and possums. And that is Saturdays at 9 a.m. starting this Saturday, March 4th. Then also at the Wilderness Station, another new program they will be having on Friday, March 10th is the Family Star Celebration. It's from 7 to 8:30 p.m. It's $5 if you're 5 and up. Under 5 is free. And it's just for a nice evening out at the stars where you'll learn some constellations and have some instruction and activities. Then on Friday, March 17th, is St. Patrick's Day Getaway. This is a popular returning aquatics event. It's for ages 7 to 13 from 6 to 9 at Patterson Park Community Center. If you pre-register, it's $5. If you come the day of, it is $7. Then we have the yard sale at Cannonsburg Village. That is Saturday, March 25th from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can either reserve a booth space until March 22nd if you have any unwanted items you want to sell, or if you just want to come shopping at the yard sale. That is Saturday, March 25th from 7 to noon at Cannonsburg Village. And then a couple programs in April, but they're biggies, so I want to make sure I mention them. We have our underwater egg hunt, and that is Saturday, April 8th at the indoor pool at Patterson. It is for ages 2 to 9, Saturday, April 8th. And then we have our Citywide Egg Hunt, which is Saturday, April 15th at 1 p.m. at Richard Siegel Park, and that is for all ages. We have all kinds of age-appropriate hunts. And then starting this morning at 8 a.m. is our summer camp registration. So we've been taking them at SportsCom, McFadden Community Center, the main office, or Patterson Park Community Center. You do need to register in person, and we prefer that the parent come to register them because they have forms to fill out and sign. A few camps have filled up, so we encourage people to not wait and come register for all of the any or all of the camps that we have. And for more information on all of our programs and events, you can find us at murfreesborotn.gov/parks, our Rec Connection guide, or Facebook.
All right. Lots going on, as always, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes all the items under new business. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Being none, we stand adjourned. Thank you.